Ugh. Oh no, I'm a Yanni girl. Okay. Welcome everyone to the finals of the Korean Open Cup. These two players have dueled against many of the finest Korean pros and some of the foreigners as well that joined in the Open Cup to make it here into a best-of-5 finals. In the bottom right of Babylon, we have the Red Zerg, Dark. In the top left, it is Classic. So Classic, having gone to the military and come back, not exactly up to the form you might be expecting if you were watching a couple of years ago, where he was even one of the top Protosses. One of his last great performances was DT blinking into the main and sniping the main base of a Zerg player. Was it Dark? I think it might have, it could have been. But I don't actually remember. It might have been Rogue as well. And then anywho, that was 2019 BlizzCon, in which Dark did go to the finals and did win that. So Classic couldn't quite defeat him. Couldn't quite get to that finals prior to him leaving for the military. But he's back now. He's looking pretty good. Dark, having not left yet, is actually soon to be going. So he even had some trouble getting to the Katowice tournament. Actually needed to make sure that he could go. Make sure that he could actually get Korea's permission. I mean, quite literally, to leave the country, promising that he'll come back. And they're like, yeah, okay, I guess, you know, that's fine. Whatever, man. Whatever, man. So we know Dark quite a bit. Classic, if you are new, if you started watching perhaps during the pandemic, which certainly a lot of people have, then you don't really know a whole lot about Classic, but you know that Dark is a very, very good Zerg player, has won multiple championships, and is generally a more aggressive Zerg, really fitting into the profile of a lot of the Korean Zergs, just being more aggressive. Not on the level as a Rogue, though. And when it comes to the aggressive openers or cheeses, they also, I think, kind of chose some different ones too. But more akin to Rogue than Serral, for instance. Certainly so. Classic was also a bit of a cheesy boy. He definitely had some of his interesting builds, and then, like the DT blink into the main, right? And then also had some of the more abusive builds as well. Was not afraid of abusing whatever was in the meta, as well as making something up on his own. So it was often very fun to watch Classic, whereas maybe some other Protoss players are just kind of humdrum, you know, they do the same thing over and over and over again. I'm not actually sure where Classic lies currently. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to cast this best of 5, to see if Classic is actually bringing much to the table, if we can expect something from him as he also heads to Katowice, I believe in that round of 32, right? So, One-ling already getting in, seeing that it is an Oracle opener is kind of a bummer just because of that distraction. The Adepts can't go across the map instantly, and just that confirmation as well. So, not that Dark would have probably expected much else in this day and age, but Classic being a bit more of a question mark, being sometimes one of those outlying Protoss players with the build orders. I mean, he could be going into a Twilight Council, for instance, because it is Babylon. And Babylon being a short map can sometimes be seen as abusive for Adepts. Also, the third base being a little ways away. And it has been forced as the third. As Classic wanted to block the hatch. I actually didn't catch if he did or not, but Dark just anticipated anyways. So Oracle into another Oracle. Second gateway coming down to make sure there's a wall off in the natural. And a third base. Very typical Protoss stuff. And Dark is going into a single evolution chamber. He's decided to defend his third base, as many Zergs do nowadays. This is not uncommon. But with only queens. So that will do the trick against an Oracle. It's still got 3 drones, which ain't too bad. But if the 2 Adepts also came across and did the exact same punish on a third base, might have been a little bit more damage than you would hope to take. But the 2 Adepts actually stayed very conservatively back at home, making sure to wall off, making sure that they're present at the third base. And now we actually have up to 4 Adepts. Twilight Council coming down pretty quickly. No Forge. So that might be pointing towards a more aggressive opener. Yes, indeed it is. Resonant Glaives on the way on 3 bases, however. So that's pretty interesting. I would have absolutely called Blink, especially if this was, for instance, Hero. But Resident Enclaves on 3 bases, instead of starting it off on 2, is going to be a bit of a surprise, perhaps. Now, Dark has decided to go into +1 melee Baneling. Now, the Banelings will be extremely helpful. Even the +1 melee Lings will be extremely helpful if they get a surround on the Adepts. And that's kind of the tricky part, right? But the combination of Ling Baneling is really what's beautiful, because the Banelings force the Adepts to split, and then the Lings get on the Adepts. But you still need a lot of Ling Baneling to do that. Straight up, if you don't have the Baneling numbers, if you're shocked, you didn't realize this is what they were doing, then the Adepts are going to win most of the time against, you know, someone especially with pure Ling. So that is a big issue, as Dark actually has not been droning. He is going into his own surprising 3-base setup, Ling Baneling all in, sub 6 minutes against Classic. And I don't actually know what this is going to look like. Classic now in defensive position as opposed to offensive is going to figure out what's going on as the Queens are scouted in the middle of the map. That was a little too suspicious. Lings are going to go for the 3rd base, of which there is absolutely nothing defending, and the Adepts have got to make a choice. Banelings are forming, enough of them to be scary to an Adept clump, and he is going to go for the recall, which is probably the smarter idea. There was not really going to be a winning moment had he tried to continue to be aggressive, whereas losing all of his probes and perhaps even letting those Lings into the natural would have been a winning moment for Dark. So I don't actually know how this game's going to go. This is one of the more interesting ones. Oracle still flying around can help out defensively, but it's actually just used up all of its energy, so not so much on that. At least it is scouting. Maybe it can see more of these Lings on the way and know that Dark is still dedicating. These Banelings on the offensive will certainly nod towards that. Banelings also trying to get to the 3rd base. The Adepts are a little split, but they're going to have to split more against the Banelings, and there they go. The splits are decent, and they are holding up against those Lings with that +1. That was fantastic for Classic, as he only loses 4 probes, did not let anything into the natural, and still has a sizable army left over. He's going to continue adding on to, actually, Stalkers. Not a bad choice. They're certainly going to tank those Banelings quite well. Try and get one of his own upgrades, and he's getting an Immortal. Now, the Immortal might not be super efficient against the Lings, but it is also something that can help out. If you're not able to spend all of your money, get whatever the hell you can, as well as help against soaking up those Banelings. And you know what? If this game is going to continue on, which it does seem like it's going to, then eventually we might see those Roaches. And a Roachborn is being slapped down by Dark. He's also trying to get a lair. Not a stranger at all to macro hatcheries. In fact, Dark's quite in love with them. And he is trying to continue on with this game, but that was a heavy round of not drones. It was a heavier round of Ling production for a very long time. And Classic, by saving so many of his probes so often, even was able to get ahead, I think, for a while there. Yes, he is currently ahead on those workers. Getting over to a 4th base might be a little bit tricky, just with the natural problem of extending. You have to take a 4th base. Suddenly those Lings are going to be able to get into the 3rd, maybe the natural and the 4th base. It's hard to cover larger areas, right? But he can play on 3 bases for a while yet without truly being scared of Dark getting to that overwhelming Zerg point, because Dark had been on such a low drone count for so long. So there's time for Classic to build up to Storm, to build up to Archons, and yeah, stay on 3 bases. Ling surrounds, getting more damage than I think Classic was really hoping for. His army was a bit light, and no Storms were available as of yet. They didn't want to turn them into Archons either, so maybe a better trade than Classic was hoping for. Now the 4th base coming down. Dark is trying to squeeze everything in so fast, so he only recently got that lair, only recently started adding in these Roaches, and he's even trying to get to an infestation pit, so he might get Fungals, actually, as he sees the rising number of Stalkers and figure out that would be helpful. Fungals also pretty helpful against Archons. And they can't use their T-Rex arms to try and actually do something. But he also, and I wouldn't be surprised by this, 'cause he could also be trying to get up to that hive already. Seems like a little bit too much, but I wouldn't be surprised. We're waiting on his decision. Apparently, nothing. I don't expect Swarm Hosts. It's already a bit late for Swarm Hosts. Well, still no decision on that hive or not hive. This doesn't really seem like a true attack, honestly. Dark has no Banelings and no Ravagers. It is going to be Swarm Host. God, that's, yeah, color me surprised. I really don't expect this in a later stage ZVP. It's going to fill out the supply, a lickety split for Dark. 15 Swarm Hosts, going to get you maxed out pretty freaking quickly, leaving no room for Ravagers. The Classic is already over that typical problem area for Protoss, which is about getting over 150 supply. Usually at that point, they've built up enough of an army, a good enough army, too, like not just mass L or something like that, you know, do okay splitting, do okay even directly combating the Swarm Hosts. The Storm's gonna help out, too, of course, versus everything. And I really wonder what Dark decided to do. I guess what it does is it does, of course, save money once you spend it on the Swarm Host, then they just pop Locust, right? So Dark is going to start building a bank, and is probably hoping that they'll keep Classic at home a little while longer. But again, because Classic is already so far into maxing out, into adding on a good number of units and Archons and Storms, I just don't think that's actually going to be true. I feel like Dark's gonna get 2 Locust Swarms. So one's already happened. The second one should happen too. And then he's going to be on his side of the map. Banelings desperately trying to get to those High Templars are unsuccessful, but the Banelings at least find something on those probes. 16 probes go down, but Classic's army is just too freaking good. Equal army supply is very deceptive. Roach, Baneling, and the Locusts may be doing something. The Locusts actually are getting in the back there. We're killing quite a few Stalkers. A couple of the Mortals going down too, but the Storms are clearing out a lot of the other mess. You can just see how powerful Classic has built an army. Stalkers with +2. There were plenty of Immortals. We're still on 3. A couple of Archons and just a buttload of Storms to help out. Classic got to the game endpoint for Protoss. They got to that huge army and pushed across the map, and Dark was unable to trade over and over and over again effectively, and certainly could not get to the better Zerg army. It would have only been, you know, Broodlords maybe. So this does seem like a done deal. Another Locust Wave, the last Locust Wave of the game. Kills the last Archon, to be fair. That's still a lot of Stalkers, and Classic has rebuilt the probes, still on 4 bases. Dark is only on 3 bases at this point. His 5th is not mining. It could also be focus fired. It might just have a last-second recall, or maybe not. The Locusts are going to expire, so there you have it. 5th base gonna go down. Roach, Ravager, a very, very small amount of it, literally 3 and 2, trying to run away. Yeah, this game, the numbers are lying a little bit. For certain. You could not look at the supply. If you look at the actual situation, you can see that Classic should be winning this game. I suppose ways you could mishandle it, if we're trying to be positive for Dark here, is that he could suddenly turtle for no good reason. Let Dark get 4th and 5th base back up and running, and then have to deal with Locust Wave after Locust Wave. Now, he wouldn't take a lot of damage, I would expect, from those Locust Waves, but he'd still allow Dark to maybe recover and build up a bigger, better army. But I don't think Classic has to do that. Classic has to defend perhaps this Locust Wave, and then he's back on the aggression, almost maxed out. Maybe I'll have a better army as he's adding on charge and +3. Shield Body Overcharge, not going to save that Nexus. But Classic is actually able to replace it rather easily. 5th is already on the way too. Is going to take that time to rebuild the 4th, and still have enough mining to continue powering up to a maxed out army, of which he doesn't even necessarily need, I would say, to win the game. Current army's already pretty freaking good. Dark is one hell of a scrappy Zerg. I gotta give him credit on that one for sure. And these Ling run-bys are gonna get more dangerous. They're currently on 2-1, and now they have Adrenal Glands as well, so you can see that the Stalker trade was not ideal for Classic. But as his 4th and 5th will be finishing up soon, and he still is on 76 probes, he's able to replace it. No reason to tackle the Locust if you don't have to, so simply running away from that, easy peasy. Ling's trying to get in the left side, but the Zealots, not charge outs quite yet, we'll deal with that. And then it's back on the offensive. Dark is going to try and at least do something with this Locust Wave. Kill the Nexus, maybe? Not even. Classic's lock and loaded with 7 swords? 6, I mean, certainly at least 4 or 5. War Prism barely out of range of the Corrosive Bile. Barreling in again, seeing the Swarm host without their Locust, taking down the Roach Ravager Baneling with the Storms on his opponent's own choke. You see, actually, both workers starting to lose out very evenly, in fact, too, and the Locust Wave is once again going to send Classic running back home, maybe a little over-eager to end it right then and there. And the 5th base also under attack. Looks like it's not going to go down, however. So they both lose 22 to 23 workers. And Dark is, I mean, usually that'd be worse for him, right? He's more desperate. Except when it comes to having Locust Waves. And then that's free. So maybe if he could have bought more time, had a couple more Locust Waves, but Classic is right back on the aggression, knowing that he still has a moment that's really nothing there without the Locust. So he was able to finally see that, feel confident enough to move in and actually end the game, something that Dark had really tried his best to stall. I mean, I think this game was supposed to end around here with that first push, but Dark is scrappy. I don't think he ever was quite making it back into the game, but I suppose you always have to give Dark something. You always have to say, well, what if for Dark? Not this particular game, though. Classic does take out Dark for game number 1. I don't think Storm over Disruptor shows that Classic's uncomfortable, actually. I think we still see Storms from other Protoss. Like I'm taking a big enough breath. Game number 2 underway on Ancient Cistern. Top right, down a game, he is DPG's Dark. In the bottom left, as the blue Protoss, he is Classic. Classic doing a bit of a different build with 3 base Resonating Glaives. Ended up working quite well against Dark's 3 base Ling Baneling attack. Also wanted to bring the Queens and had to stop it before it really started. I think that type of situation, it really depends on who's kind of aware of things first. So if Classic had no idea what was going on, still had his adepts all clumped up, got surrounded, tried to shade, Banelings come in, it might have been game over right then. But Classic had gotten an idea of what was going on, was able to split his adepts a little bit, allow them to trade against a slightly inferior number of Lings, and then the Banelings forcing them to split more. Well, they did split more, and then the Lings were already mostly cold by the time they were vulnerable by splitting to a Ling surround. So it really worked out well for Classic because he was able to say, okay, what I need to do against this is what I need to do, got it. And when you're 3 base versus 3 base, and you both say, okay, buddy, stop, let's chill for a little bit, the Protoss player is going to be in a better position on 3 base. The Zerg player has a little more to make up for, and if they do everything absolutely correctly, and they get a little bit of a jab here and a jab there, and the Protoss takes that jab a little bit more than they should, so a Ling run by, a Baneling can't on the probe line, letting Lings into the natural, then that does push that back probably into Dark's favor, honestly. The Classic was making sure not to let that happen. Never let the Lings into the natural. Even though there was an opportunity, Dark didn't find it. And then really stopped the Banelings from doing a heck of a lot of damage to the probe line, at least early on. Obviously, there were some trades as the game went on. So Dark did try to recover, to fit everything in the time allotted, as Classic also kind of recovered from the situation. He got all his technology, he's got his upgrades, he had a little bit of a, this or that running around the map trying to distract. But then he opted to go for Swarm Hosts, which I think if Classic was in a little bit worse of a situation, if he was scrambling, if his mechanics were really still rusty from being in the military, then I think that would have been really, really great. And then Dark would have more comfortably made a bank and more comfortably got into maybe a late game DVP. But with Classic having not really messed up that kind of transition period, a Swarm Hosts never really felt all that promising. And I don't think I'm biased against Swarm Hosts. I think I've seen enough games where they are really good to say that fairly. A Dark tried to do a cheese, tried doing all-in, and it failed. You could chalk it up to that. Does that mean that Dark is the inferior player? Absolutely not. Does it mean that he's already out of ideas versus Classic? Absolutely not. Could even just go ahead and change that build order into a Nidusworm Ling Queen build, and that would have been a little trippy as well. Classic also probably unlikely to do the exact same build and turn. The Resident Glaives on 3 bases, unless it's something that he's experimenting with. And we'll find out in this series if he does it more than once, right? Once again, starting off with a double Oracle. This time around, though, I don't believe a Stalker was made in the last game. It was 2 Adepts, and then 2 more Adepts, and then more Adepts, because he went to Resident Glaives, so that makes a lot of sense. Classic, pretty conservative with his opening units. I don't think he actually got that follow-up scout with the Adept, so he technically doesn't know there's a 3rd base. But it's not a Ling all-in, so... Well, it's not the speed Ling all-in, I should say, because we do see a fairly fast lair, not a whole lot of gas. It could actually be the Nidusworm Ling. I swear I haven't watched this series. If I'm right, it's just my brilliance shining. All right, that's all. Classic is going for a fast Twilight Council again, with the Forge this time, though. So actually, I think this might just be Blink. But up against a Ling Nidusworm all-in, that could be terrible, actually. This could all rely on finding that first Nidusworm. If that's actually what it is, second gas is on the way. So maybe not, maybe not. It seems... Oh, it is. Oh, okay. I know he does add Banelings eventually to this. I believe I literally have this build order up on my YouTube as a build order tutorial, if you guys want to go ahead and steal that. So, this drone is looking awfully funny, moving across, but it also didn't... I wouldn't know what to think about that, honestly. Why are the drones moving across? I don't know. I honestly don't know. This has to be a misrally, right? So Classic can't really read into that, and he hasn't gotten close enough to really see too much else suspicious going on, because the Queen's warded that away. He must know that it is possible, and his vision actually went to his bottom right. So I think he's already suspicious that it is a Nidusworm. He's going to cover his main base, but there's other places but the Nidusworm. Charge is on the way, which I think is great to have against this. I didn't see if he started it before he kind of realized what was going on. But if he changed his mind, then that's great. Unfortunately, it's not going to be done yet, and his units are caught out in the middle. Oh, just spaces away from the shield battery to try and help them as well. Oh, no. Obviously, you can't necessarily stop the first Nidusworm when it's placed like this. Oh, clever save on that shield battery, but that might not be enough. But then you would have just wanted to keep all of your units alive for as long as possible, right? You would have wanted to keep that bundle of units alive, kept warping in, and then eventually you would overwhelm with superior units. However, things have already started to unfold unfavorably for Classic. And with that Nidusworm covering his attempted wall off, it's quite clever from Dark. It looks like this is going to be game. Classic, I really do believe, had some intuition that this was happening, was planning on defending it, and then that trap right there, just real bummer. Real bummer. He would have even had a Colossus on the way. If he had just held on for a little while longer, he could have had this Colossus and a bit of an army to protect it with. And instead, Dark wins with, yeah, a Ling Nidusworm. All right. Didn't mean to predict that, but that sometimes is Dark. GG. Streaming until the end of this series. Which, if Dark keeps cheesing, might not be very long. See ya, Kankuro. Hello. It's all tied up as we head into Dragon Scales for game number 3. In the top left, we have Dark. The bottom right side is now Classic. I'd say they swapped, but they actually didn't, did they? Same positions as the last game. Dragon Scales has proven it for me to be a difficult map to defend on, but apparently some of the Protoss don't really mind it. Third is a little ways away, but then to me, the amount of open space leading into any of these bases can be quite difficult to defend. Well, let's see if Classic has the same trouble, or makes it look like it's no big deal. Seems like Dark is in one of his cheesy states again. It does seem the more I watch his open cup replays, the more I see that he does like cheesing in the open cups. I don't see casters talking much about upgrade thresholds. You mean like +1 zealots? Or +2 melee against banelings? I mean, I think we do it when it is required. I mean, I know it's very difficult to find an example, but if you could find an example where we should have done that, I'd be interested to see it. So rarely do the upgrades cause a kill count difference, kill shot difference in the midst of a battle. And if upgrades do finish in the midst of a battle, I mean, I think we're usually pretty good about pointing that out. I think we mostly cover the big ones, honestly. I don't know, IMO. That's one of the casters. +2 melee versus the probes. +2 ship weapons versus stalkers. +2 vehicle weapons against marines. There's usually not. There's just usually not that kill shot difference, you know? If 2-2 finishes in the midst of a TVT marine versus marine battle, I think we're pretty good about pointing that out and how drastic that is, but you can't really quantify it. And rarely has there been a time, in my opinion, where that +2 ship weapons does finish in the midst of a battle. But I definitely can remember sometimes it doing it and pointing it out, so. I'm not trying to say your opinion's wrong. I'm just saying, yeah, it'd be best if we had an example somehow. So this is just a Stalker opener. This is right into a Stalker instead of the Adept. Classic really has not been doing a lot of scouting past the Probe Scout, which is dangerous. I mean, if Dark would want to throw out Speedling all-in, I feel like it would work. The only problem is that perhaps Classic has always had this probe here prepared in case it is exactly that, because then you would have that little bit of notice start walling off. And he's even looking. Okay, so maybe he is very well aware of that problem, but instead of potentially sacrificing his Adept going across the map, he does just rely on the probe into anticipation, and then the Adept Shade looking around for a building number of Lings. I would say most Protoss do not do this, though. So Classic already showcasing a bit of his style. Now, there's not a Ling all-in on the way. There is a Roach Warren already on the way. 2 gases already down. And like I said, Dark just seems to be a bit in the cheesy mood. Unless he thinks this is somehow aggressive. I mean, he's seen nothing. So I was talking a lot about how actually Classic wasn't doing a lot. Dark also wasn't doing a lot. So Dark, I mean, you could think this is perhaps Resonant Glaives. You see no Oracle, right? The first Oracle was held back. We might have even had, and I didn't pay attention, a Warp Gate attempt at faking. So Dark might have been anticipating that. In fact, I think that's exactly what happened. He stopped his drones as well as like 41 and then just built 2 spores because he realized what was up. And this is a little bit awkward. This spore is already done though, and Dark is just sending the units he's making across the map. So I want to say this is turning a problem into a benefit. Less so than Dark was just planning on doing this type of attack, but with Dark, I suppose it's really hard to say. Classic might have some big brain ambition in this game, but I don't know if it's gonna work out. No shield battery on that 3rd base, and now no pylon either. Void Ray only just now starting as Classic realizes what's up. Desperately trying to warp in as many units as possible off of these gateways, but it's only gonna do so much. We even have a little bit of that micro coming in for Dark, as he does turn one of them into a Ravager as well. And Dark sees an opportunity to win this game. He's currently supply blocked. That is the only reason he's not reinforcing with more units right now. But more Overlords just popped. Nice target fire there from the Pulsar Beam on top of the building Ravagers, but he's let the Lings into the natural base. Probes have to be pulled. And Classic agrees, gonna try and pull them, but it's a bit awkward around this building Robo. One more Ravager pops in too, creating like a pseudo wall. I'm not actually sure who that's more beneficial for. The Void Ray's finally here, and if it's only Roaches left over, the Void Ray will do totally fine against that. But the Lings have been chopping away on that Nexus the entire time. It's already dead, basically. It's gone. No saving that. Ravagers were forming a bit ambitiously on the forefronts, but apparently they're gonna finish. Apparently they're gonna finish. Go after the Void Ray. Should never actually kill that, and Classic moves it out of the way, but Dark has done the damage he needed to do. Now he's back onto the droning. He still has a decent army in case any type of counterattack could happen, which it really can't. 4 gateways and a Warp Prism, how much are you going to do against a Zerg player who, I mean, may not expect it, but could probably easily deal with it? You're not going to risk it. It's just, it'd be basic 4 gateway. That doesn't cut it anymore in StarCraft 2. So Dark, as I said, I think just kind of turned that into a good thing. As opposed to it necessarily being his plan. And Classic was perhaps too caught up in the idea of, ooh, I got him. You know, I actually tricked him. To take a second and maybe try to scout what was popping out of the eggs, what was going across the map, perhaps even how many drones, right? But then the drone count would have also been a kind of, ha, gotcha. So, that's unfortunate. I mean, I could definitely see a lot of the Zerg players not throw those units across the map and just go, oh, shucks, you got me. Now I have to go back in the droning even harder. But not Dark, man, not Dark. Who also has managed to kill the 2 Oracles. Both of them are now dead. A single Void Ray is hardly scary. And Dark in this game is going to go into Swarm Host again, which I think just makes a lot of sense in this game. It's not that it didn't make sense in the first game. It just was already not a great situation. So it was trying to buy some time, the Swarm Host. It just couldn't work out in that first game. This time around, he's got all the time in the world. It's coming out a bit faster. In terms of the pacing of this game, it's coming out especially fast because Classic has not been on a 3rd base. So to have Swarm Host already sending out his Locust as he's finishing saturating his 3rd, I mean, that's pretty scary. The good news is he's already on his way to Storm. So maybe he can get some really good hits with Storm, you know, bait out the Locust Wave on top of a Zealot, storm them, and then not have his Nexus even threatened. I don't know, but it's going to be difficult. Dark's even adding on a Nidus Swarm here, which, you know, you would usually do, but in the first game he didn't. On Dragon Scales, it's a bit of a... It's maybe a larger map, maybe, but it's kind of direct, so I could see him just parking a Swarm Host here, too. The Nidus Swarm is going to allow that mobility. Attack here, and attack over here as well. This large main base is, funnily enough, I mean, the Locusts are going to waste a lot of time getting to something, but the point is, there's not going to be anything defending, because Classic doesn't know this is on the way. He's not gotten the Scout and Infestation Pit. The Void Ray, again, alone. So not scary. Love his little attempt to get some creep spread denial, but with the Nidus Swarm sounds, quick panic check in your main base, and then a realization, hey, that's probably for Swarm Hosts. And that probe's going to confirm it. No chance to stop the Locust from reaching that Nexus with a probe line. Actually, the Storm Heaters are not going to be that bad. Just in time, really. So the probe pull was good. Apparently not even a probe went down, maybe literally one. Depends on what game hard overlay they're using. And the Nidus Swarm is on the way on the right side. Classic's Void Ray is going to be helpful. Shout out to this Void Ray. You were helpful against the roaches, and then I thought you were completely useless, and now you're helpful again. So well done. That Nidus Swarm doesn't necessarily have to come up, though. I mean, Dark can be spewing out his locusts from anywhere, and they're probably still going to be somewhat effective. Classic is still on a desperate supply, really holding on to the idea that his storms can cover a lot. And they can, if they're ideal. They're hitting the Roach Ravager army on ramps, if they're clearing up the locusts before they spread out on something. And then Classic might be able to hold. It's got to be such great play. This is even not going to be ideal storms, right? They do take out the Locust, going to help take out the Lings. Shield Body Overcharge going to be available for longer than Dark would have hoped, but there he goes, target firing it. And the Roach Ravager is going to disengage, but that was also a lot of free units going in there. So as long as he's not chased down immediately afterwards, Dark can be quite comfortable in the situation, and he won't be chased down. It's just too dangerous to do that. Put your High Templars out in the middle of the field, knowing the Locust Wave is coming up anytime as well. Or possibly other things, actually. Like, Classic has still so little scouting. There's never really getting any scouting. Doesn't know the Hive's on the way. Doesn't know the Lurker Den's on the way. He's just desperately trying to hold. And the hold's going to get worse every time as he cannot grab a fourth base to replace some of the units he's missing out on. Some of the units that he never got to make, such as a surplus of Archons. And now he's even losing those Stalkers. Storm's starting to run low, too. And the Swarm Hosts are locked and loaded in a Nidus Swarm somewhere. Oh, they actually already just said they had the Locust Wave. So they're waiting for perhaps Classic to get a little overzealous. Or just waiting to pop the Locust, either way. Offensively, defensively, quote unquote. If Classic were to push into him. Classic's +2 is going to finish up, but that's not going to help him. It's going to need a dozen storms. A buttload of storms maybe would have helped him, but they apparently are not available as he's forced to run away into his own natural. That leaves the third base wide open. And the army is going to take that down once again. Probes losing against those poor Lings, or the poor probes losing against the Lings, damn it. And Dark is just going to disengage. Classic supply has gotten worse in the last few minutes. Seems impossible that he's going to get over even 140 at this point. And the Swarm Hosts are prepared on the right side to hit the main base of Classic. Who knows, he's all in. Just going to try and chase this town and maybe hope for a bit of a miracle. But even losing High Templars if they go too far forward, they are going to take out the Roach Ravager army. All right, that's something. But Dark has already transitioned. It's not even about Roach Ravager Swarm Host anymore. He's on his way to Lurkers. He's building nothing but Lurkers, in fact, getting both of their upgrades as well. And it's possible that Classic will just tap out as soon as he sees the Lurkers. Up, Lurkers. Okay, GG. We're also playing a bit of a whack-a-mole game. Classic can't get rid of all of these Nidus Worms. Still 2 up and running. Dark's on 5 bases. 6 drones is not that impressive, right? But he's had so much of the bank accrued thanks to the Swarm Host play. Nine Lurkers. That's not crazy amount yet. At 11. But against what Classic has, something he will never be able to topple. Even the best concave. Unless the Lurkers are just bunched up against a bunch of storms. Then maybe. Then maybe, but more Lurkers are on the way. More Lurkers, more good. That's what Dark's going for. We're also still doing harassment. Nidus from back in the main base. Swarm Host still ready to go. Don't forget they're still in play. And the Lurkers with both their upgrades are going to be able to defend at a moment's notice. Nothing Classic can do as he's also getting supply blocked. And maybe it'll be just one of the lamest tap outs we've seen in a while. Just shrug and okay, I guess I'm dead. Because this ain't doing much. I love the ambition. I love the hope. Classic is full of it, man. But oof. Nope. Can't hype this one up. The writing was on the wall. GG. Dark now leads 2-1. I want to show you guys how Blazer's tail is currently situated. Ever seen a cat's tail up on the wall?
Twitch Prime sub received. Thank you for appeasing the overmind.
Tamer, thank you for the Prime sub. Well, I'll see you later, Mr. Chaz. So let us rest my rear. And his butt's not up against it, just the tail. It looks like it's like hung over something. Blazer is the orange one. Ziggy's the black one. Apollo's the white one. And you don't see the other cats. It's game number 4, perhaps the final game of the series. In the bottom right, up 2-1, he is Dark. And in the bottom left, is the blue Protoss. He is Classic. Having won the first game of the series, perhaps raising everyone's hopes that Classic is back in form. Apparently, it was less to do with Classic and more to do with Dark's all-in just not hitting at the right time against the right build, and him already kind of cutting himself off at the knees a little bit that Classic was able to take advantage of. I don't actually know what their history is, but if I had to guess, in the last couple of years, since Classic has come back from military, Dark has probably won majority of the games. Dark's lethal. Even when he plays a macro game, he's particularly good. And as far as comebacks goes, he's definitely one of the best comeback Zergs ever, maybe? I don't know about ever, but I feel like that's something that people don't highlight a whole lot about Dark. But I want to start highlighting, because this guy's ability to try and recover after a failed defense against a 2-Rax, or a failed Ling Baneling all-in, it's getting kind of incredible. You know, everyone considers Raynor comeback kid, and he's certainly also very good at it. But I would say that Dark's has performed even more larger from behind victories. Couldn't do it in the first game, though, to be fair. Couldn't do it in the first game. Then his next two, well, cheeses. The next game was definitely a cheese. That last game that Dark ended up winning, not really a cheese so much as I was saying, as much as he thought perhaps it was a Twilight Council opener. It was Resident Glaives. And then when the 2 Oracles showed up, he got, you got me. Like, I didn't build a lot of drones. I was building roaches. And then he just sent the units across the map. And Classic didn't expect that. So, you know, that happens as well. I wish I could give more kudos to Classic for attempting to do some of these unique builds or do a little bit of the tricks. But particularly the last game's trick didn't really work out. And then his first game build was not able to show how powerful it could be because it was more about the dynamic of both of them doing something early and aggressive. And we haven't truly seen, suppose, Classic's just straight up macro game. So maybe there are some flashes of the old Classic, but I think after the last 2 games, unless this game is very different, Say that Classic might not have a super great chance at advancing in Katowice. Maybe his bracket will be easier on him, though, to be fair. Dark is one of the favorites to even win Katowice, so it's, you know, maybe being a little unfair. You know, you can't beat Dark. I mean, come on. Like, how good are you? I think that's asking a little bit much. Classic is opening a bit differently. It is with a Void Ray, also 2 Adepts, and this time he uses the Adept offensively. But only 1 Adept, so offensive is like, quote-unquote. He's using it to scout. And then a Void Ray. Here you are. Void Ray first. So this could lead into something a bit tricky. Dark so far isn't doing anything suspicious. The Adept is confirming this over and over and over again, but with speed finishing, it should probably skedaddle. Go back and help defend a 3rd base, if that is indeed what Classic is going to get. You kind of have to. You do kind of have to. Without a 3rd base, the Zerg player becomes increasingly obvious what it could be. And actually, this Overlord is going to get in as a freebie scout. See an Oracle being chronoed at the same time that the Void Ray kills an Overlord, so now he knows exactly what the build opener was. No fear of 2 Oracles swooping in. A bit of a surprise like last time, right? So he has plenty of time out on his Spore or position his Queens. And with that, you really know that it's something too sus. You still want to scout the follow-up, still want to scout the Twilight Council Forge, Robo timings, if you could. But as the Overlords are now dead, you can't really do that. So you're going to be more so focusing on timing the 3rd base, which is pretty normal. And then what are they building on that 3rd base? Dark with the slightly off Overlord scout. Got a lot of freebies there. And he's going to move into something he knows he's kind of allowed to. He doesn't really need to build up into roaches, right? Nothing aggressive is heading his way. So he's going to add on an Evolution Chamber, go directly into that +1 melee, perhaps like that first game. And, well, I guess he could do exactly what he did in the first game, which is also go for a Ling Baneling attack. But it would be some serious deja vu. It would be very similar to that first game if that actually is his plan. We might get to see Classic actually use his 3-base Resident Glaives build offensively, more than defensively, and Dark's Ling Baneling opener defensively. Which should change the dynamic again. Like, so much of this is going to come down to kind of who figures out what the other person's doing first. And with the Oracle dying, did Classic already figure it out? To an extent, actually. Actually, no, he got everything. He got everything. So we saw a single Evolution Chamber, a Baneling Nest, no Roach Warren, and he should figure out the possibilities are 2. Offensive Ling Baneling like that first game, or defensive Ling Baneling, like you might expect more so. Either way, Classic needs to build a good Adept account, and then try and get them to do damage. So if Dark throws his units across the map, and Classic holds, and that's kind of Dark doing damage to himself. If Dark defends, well, then that's what we'd expect more so, right? So this is what the first game was kind of supposed to look like to Classic. He's going to jump on top of the Banelings, very dangerous to do, and actually cancel every single one before they finished. That's, you know what? This still isn't going particularly well. The lane number is still good enough, even without that +1 being done. With the help of the Queens, all 6 of them. They aren't usually good DPSers, but with 6 of them, I guess they did something. The Adept count's already been reduced down to 5. And 2 of them pretty injured. Drones are still going to go down, especially as more Adept shade across. But the Ling surrounds are now super effective. And +1's going to finish. So the Adepts are no longer an issue, and the question is, did they do enough damage? The more Adepts that get thrown across the map, perhaps the more drones go down. But also, the more units Classic won't have at home to defend if these Lings had to go across the map. So that's kind of a scary thought. It looks like Classic is still continuing with the Adept pressure while expanding to a 4th base. So I saw an Immortal walk across the map that actually shouldn't even be here. Pretty sure that's misrallied. That's going to get surrounded. It's not even going to be helpful in general against Ling Baneling. So what you doing, buddy? Oh, well, you're dying. That's what you're doing. And Dark has already recovered the drone count. He's going to add up to about 79 workers. Clear out the last couple of Adepts. Kill the Immortal just barely. At +1 working there. And then, well, build up to a huge Ling Baneling army. With the Roach Warren finally added on too, we'll see the Roach Ravager added on. So Classic, I mean, he's buying a lot of time. And with his 4th base finishing up, the economies are kind of matching each other. 21 Adepts, man, that is a lot. That is a lot. But really not all that impressive of a drone kill count. Ling kill count's okay. It feels like none of the Adept run-ins have really been particularly effective. If one of these had killed 15 or 16 drones and a whoops-a-daisy from Dark, you didn't realize something like that would be a lot more hopeful for Classic. But we're heading into what it could be perceived as a even macro game. Yeah, the Protoss being on 4 bases, the Zerg's 4 bases doesn't sound ideal for the Zerg player, but I think Dark's not going to be really all that far behind because of it. 5th base is now on the way. Like I said, he's going to eventually build up to mass Ling, Banling, Roach, Ravager, and we'll see if Classic can position correctly to defend against that. That's what's going to be key. He is getting up to Storm. He's getting his upgrades. He's already got, well, Resonant Glaze, of course. Actually has not started up Charge or Blink, but the Storm's certainly one of the more important things to grab. And then maybe he's planning on going into Blink. Hopefully he remembers if that is indeed his plan, to actually get the upgrade. There we go. There we go. And here's Dark's big power-up. 5 base, 80 workers against 4 base, 85 workers. Classic is economically doing quite well. But his army is still a little bit soft. Take out those High Templars, take out those Storms, and he is going to get overwhelmed, for sure. He's also missing a very easy and basically obvious shield battery on his 4th base. I don't know why you would skip that. A little bit of Sim State on his 3rd. That is nice. Some High Templars ready to storm. Run-bys. That's cool. But shield battery on the front seems like it could be helpful as well. You know. That is a hell of a lot of storms. Unless Dark can take them out, they're going to do all the damage necessary. Banelings actually roll past the army, right into the natural. Nope, good block there with the Stalker Warp in. But now the 4th base is vulnerable. And the Storms are no longer necessarily taking as much advantage over this would-be choke, I suppose. Banelings are not going to hit the High Templars. Pop a lot of the Hardened Shields of the Immortals, but the Nexus goes down when really it felt like it wasn't supposed to. Just that simple run-by of the Banelings forcing Classic to move back, half a screen, if that, was enough for Dark to get the damage he wanted to get. Kills 20 probes, kills the 4th base, and is going to be able to remax before Classic actually gets across the map. Now, Classic, at 160 supply, with a bunch of Storms, the Warp Prism available is still a threat, for sure. But now Dark can maybe get a little more of the trade going on. Force an engagement back away, force an engagement back away. It's becoming increasingly less likely as Classic moves into Dark's 4th base. Dark's going to go for some either buying time maneuvers with all the Baneling run-bys, or just hoping to make this the most all-in that Classic could ever be. It's going to be the most all-in he could be, for sure. Classic down to sub-30 workers. This is the army he's going to have for the rest of the game. Is it going to be enough? The Storm's mostly already used up. There's only one more available, and Dark still has a huge Baneling Ravager army. Easy sacrifice of that 3rd hatch. No worries there. Pull the drones away. That is acceptable for Dark, as he also continues to max out yet again. Here comes the big attack. That's the last Storm. That's the last Storm, so of course Dark has the green light. Crows of Biles flying every which way. Ling's coming back from the run-bys, and they're going to take out every last unit here. Classic got into a decent position in this game, actually. But letting himself be forced into an all-in did not work against the Titan that is Dark. GG. Dark wins 3-1. The most epic Korean Open Cup ever. Just kidding, it really wasn't. But GG's. Hope you enjoyed it. Ugh. Trying to take deep breaths and expel is actually quite difficult to do, honestly. I really need to work on taking appropriate breaths and using compression while also trying to think on the fly and change like the loudness level of myself at a moment's notice. It's actually quite difficult. Because you can't just literally be like, hold on, Banelings, while I do this. And sometimes I would focus on breathing and then I'd forget like what I want to say next. Banes are strong. Banes are pretty good units. That's going to be it for the stream, guys. I have a lot of prep to do and videos to make. Only 3 more days until